The impact of slavery on academic education for slaves, Black Americans, African Americans, was deeply felt, and it continues to be deeply felt in this time period today. Africans that were brought to the New World were not brought to the world for educational development. They were brought to the New World to become slaves, to become property, to do work for free. The challenges that the slaves and even the slave owners had was because of the different dialects. Many of the Africans that came from the continent of Africa spoke many different languages. So the challenge was not only to understand their language, but to teach them English. English was taught to them for the sole purpose of controlling, for the sole purpose to get them to do the bidding of those that owned them. Other barriers that was possessed or limited the Africans from learning was the family structure. See, in a normal society in which white Americans lived during that time, there was a family unit, a unit in which the father, the husband, was the breadwinner, and the mother, the wife, was the sole provider of education. She made sure that the children received the tools necessary to become educated, to become literate. And speaking of literacy, during this time period, another barrier that was in the way of academic development were the anti-literacy laws. See, these laws were put into place because there was a fear that if Africans would learn how to read and write, they would understand the Constitution of the United States. They would understand that they had rights, freedom, and liberties that the same people that owned them also possessed. See, when Nat Turner was taught how to read the Bible, he was a prime example of the revolts and the revolutions that would take place once Africans learned how to read and write. This was a great concern for the slave owners and for the white communities. The fear that they would take over was the pressing concern that many of them had. So, in turn, what would happen when individuals such as Margaret Douglas, who stepped out on her faith and her beliefs and taught Africans how to read and write, would soon be jailed. And those fines and those punishments were in place to keep individuals from teaching Africans how to read and write. Another individual was a Reverend Alexander Garden. See, him and Margaret Douglas, they wanted to make sure that when individuals or Africans learn how to read the Bible, they understood what the Bible was saying. They understood that God was love, God is love, and God created all men to be equal. These are the same principles that are written in the Constitution of the United States. But these principles were not put in place for the Africans that were brought to the New World. However, those who stepped out of the normalcy of controlling the slaves through words and the words of the Bible telling them to obey their masters, they broke out of that norm and wanted to allow the Africans to learn, to have the same rights and benefits that they had. Those impacts today are still going on because we have many African Americans today that don't understand the importance and the value of education. Many areas in the United States, rural America, are living in poverty and they don't have the resources or the funds. So thus, there's still an impact of slavery in today's society on the educational development of African Americans and Africans during that time period.